Welcome back, everybody. Rich Brubaker, Shanghai-based social entrepreneur, here today with Illac Diaz from Leader of Light. Just had a really enlightening conversation, actually. I've met with a lot of entrepreneurs, but what I really liked about this conversation is that he talks about the power of community and empowering them, but more than that, helping them to make him obsolete. In the last 6-7 years, he's scaled across thousands of communities, dozens of countries with a very simple product. And what's phenomenal is that he's built it in a way so that he can be obsolete. And that is something that's very unique, and we have a great conversation about how he's done that, some of the challenges of it, but why you need to persist in making sure that communities can solve their own problems so that they don't lose their economy, they don't lose their way.
Hi everyone, my name is Illac Diaz. I'm the Executive Director of My Shelter Foundation, which handles alternative construction, but also usage, light, water, and food. And basically we're talking here about Leader of Light, which was a community-built program where we believed solar jobs will be available to communities that they're more responsible in maintaining, scaling, and repairing solar lights than the imported patented model. We began here in the Philippines about 6 years ago, and today we're in 30 countries, about 300 staff, and yeah, we do 500,000 lights every year.
Wow, that's amazing. All right, so started 6 years ago. What was the original inspiration or vision for the start?
Well, My Shelter Foundation does alternative schools. We do bamboo schools, earthen schools, paper, sand. So we're 7,100 plus islands. And just moving from central manufacturing, hollow blocks, steel, glass was really expensive. And that's why we have, huge shortage of schools despite the growing population. And so I said, why not counterpart that with community built structures? And so that's where we began.
What was wrong with that, and why is the community better at this?
Let's look at the world trend. The United Nations OCHA came out with a report stating 60 to 80% of funding, humanitarian funding, is going into logistics. Right. Something's already wrong with that statement, but we still continue to put priority in refining the distribution model when we know that catastrophe, poverty are often interrupted by all kinds of logistical problems, all kinds of recurring cycle problems of storms, and just the fact that it takes so many months for it to go from one place in the world all the way to the people that benefit from it, and even if they get it, they get 10 to 20% ideally of it. The silent tremor in the room is, why are we not empowering people to be able to solve it themselves? Or the locals who are the first ones on board and the ones who really live there, why are we not empowering them to be able to do that? So this was sort of the way that the world's moving. And of course, with the 3D technologies, is how do you hyper-localize? How do you hyper-localize solutions to poverty from centralized, that you were saying, right, to regional, to the future, which is just decentralize it?
Right. Actually, I had a very similar program, as I mentioned, where we had the community containers, and we sent these out. Now, we sent the team that put it together with it. Yeah. So if anything went wrong, the community couldn't fix it. And actually, if I look at water filtration, if I looked at lighting, if I looked at the library donations, oftentimes we would go in, we'd parachute a team, right, and then we'd walk out, we'd check, we'd say we did what we were supposed to do for our donor, but as long as it worked, it was fine. But when there was a problem, that became another issue. So it was a bit of a show. I mean, the intent, I think, is always pretty good, right? But the inefficiency, I think, is what maybe you were driving for. Is really remove that by going community-based models.
Well, before, we used to try to as I said, parachute in. We used a very, as I said, the philanthropic model, which is very essential in many ways. But what I'm saying is, if it's not partnered with a bottom-up approach, it's just nobody really calculates what happens in 2 years' time. Nobody wants to report that, right? And so what we did, like for example with containers, I remember in Haiyan, is a group said, why are we just bringing in like all these hollow blocks? We can only build so much. Let's just bring a container full of tools and lend it like a library. And everybody, just came there and started fixing their house. And next thing you know, the village started going up, rather than the bunk system where it was a long bunk of coconut lumber. As soon as they put it in, they started molding already, and getting waterlogged, and it just took so long. And so the houses went up all around it, and this bunk houses were and people didn't even want to live in it. So the power of the community is, I guess, what we're talking about here. How come what will it take to find a future for the community? Because the perspective from abroad is, let's get this thing done and solved, and then move on to the next, right? And ours is, wait, we actually live here, and because we live here, we have this recurring problem that it won't take long till this thing happens again.
With that as context, how did this come about? Because you were building houses, you're building shelters. How did this come about as an idea, as a new business back then?
Well, Haiyan, one of the darkest moments, I think, the first category 5 for climate change, hitting the islands. Usually it hockey pucks, and it goes up, right? But this time, everything's moving to the left. So you'll see this with Vanuatu. You'll see this with the Philippines, where it directly hits into the country, a place where we were experienced with storm, but 20-foot storm surge, boats that are parked all the way out there coming onto the land. It's just things that has never, a whole leveling, like you saw with the Bahamas, leveling whole cities. I mean, for us, you would think that in the country it was already horrific, but to see it in a first world country, like to level. These were the things that we experienced early on. And so for us, the immediacy of the centralized was important. So the reason why this was sort of scaled was the fact that we saw a lot of children getting burned with kerosene lamps. Any savings that they had, the women would buy kerosene, by bangka come in. They were very expensive, dangerous. So you would see that they would light this inside their tents, right? Some tents would burn down. But what really inspired me was the children having a large number of children having third-degree burns. And so I said, why don't you just do solar? And so we did. We started at first saying, look, we need 7,000. I know we built this kind of community-built solar lights in schools. It began as a program for the women to be able to have their children study at night, right? These indigenous tribes, because I built schools. And so, to give them a job, I would ask them to build solar lights for their children. But later on, I gave it to them and I said, this is not yours, but I'll give you extra, and why don't you rent it out? Keep the solar panels and just rent out the 50 lights, and let's just see if the money comes in. Later on they said, sir, I actually have a surplus of money. Can I buy more lights? And then they'd franchise it. So I realized that there was a business model, retailing lights to change kerosene. So people were spending like $50 pesos, 50, sorry, 50,
Yeah, so
50 pesos every 2 weeks.
So it's about $1 US.
Or $1 US, rather than, that instead of spending the same amount every half week for kerosene. And so it was, instead of 35%, it was, and they didn't have to go down the hill or across across the river,
right,
or even worse, the channel, to just get constant kerosene. So it was really a powerful income for them. And then we expanded it to mobile charging systems like this one, where if you wanted to charge your mobile, you can charge, and street lights.
But this is
put in street lights.
This is kind of the original one, right? So walk me through a little bit, like, what are we looking at here? What are the parts, and what's the innovation in this thing?
So basically, starting from the basics, what happens is by building it with local parts, you can actually build it in a village.
Okay.
Right. So imported, patented, expensive have what is called microcircuits, and these microcircuits, they are planned obsolescence to break down. So you really have to fix it. Second is they don't use lithium; they use nickel cadmium.
Right.
And so these leaks, and after like 2 years, you have to go into debt to buy it again. So the balance in the books looks really positive, but actually the impact on the people is more like, okay, from kerosene, just move it to debt to buy a new one. So we wanted it, with local parts, so we can use motorcycle LED.
Oh, okay.
If something breaks, you pay for it in small amounts, and basically you can use this one, all this vape batteries.
Okay.
So you can literally buy them.
All the parts are locally accessible.
Yeah. I mean, this is and you can check it. I mean, it's charging. It's not charging. So also the advent of easily available solar also helped the transition for us.
Sure.
And next thing you know, people were writing to us. We came out with a video, I think the viral one you saw, where we said, why don't we build a savings program where we stick plastic bottles of water and bleach, just to let refracted light during the day. When they save money after 1 month or a little bit more, they actually can buy the evening lights, or they can recondition their kerosene lamps into evening lights. It just made so much sense to really look at it from a very bottom-up approach of savings rather than debt.
So you said the business model makes sense, particularly for these women and for the villagers themselves. How does it make sense for you, though? I mean, you've got a bunch of common parts here. You have an idea that's open source and out and available on the internet, right? The villagers who buy their first one seem to make money off of it. How do you make money? Like, where does this business model make sense for you? Because it's kind of like, I have an idea that will help the world, but how do you employ so many hundreds of people?
So it's not an original idea, but Habitat for Humanity, they don't sell homes. What they do is basically they organize corporates to come together and give their time, and for them to people to help build this experience, the experience of helping. And so what they do is they buy all the materials and get their corporate staff to build them, or schools, they do the same thing. And so we learned from that and says, okay, nobody's going to buy lights for the women in the village, but what if we do like corporate volunteers? And so what happens is we come in, we bring all the parts, we have our show and tell, we have we have all the trainers, and 300 to 400 of them starts going at it. Then we add like 20-25%, depending if we have to put trucks and trainers, and from there we suddenly have this huge stock of lights that we can now work with. We work with corporate foundations and women cooperatives, and that way, as they build, remember that experience with that one woman with the sari stores that just started renting and says, oh, I need to buy more, and then I need to franchise it. We're now doing it with women cooperatives. Also, as I said, either they rent out lamps or charge your phone, or street lights. If you want street lights in front, you pay, each household pays $1, and so the women cooperative keeps the light going, and so you pay for public lighting.
That's great. I mean, you really tie. I mean, the funding model itself sounds very similar to what I do at Hands On, where I have corporates, about 20% of my volunteers, but they pay for the other 80%. So they really, without their profit, I couldn't subsidize everything else for free. But what I really like is also you get their hands onto this thing, and they get to meet the people they're impacting. So the emotion as well is, it creates that deep tie that hopefully also maintains a long-term connection for you to the brand as well.
Well, also that we're a small group, and so what happens is a lot of these corporates they don't originally come from the city. They look for a better life in the city. So a lot of them have connections outside. So they do call on us and say, look, we have some money. We would like to be teachers now. So like ambassadors. So later on, they are people that go, or they go even pioneering, or they go back and start teaching how to do it. And so from there, or some of them even put up a business for it, and we're completely okay with it. But when you start talking about 1.2 billion, the last thing you want to do is think about one or two companies saying, I could solve it, right? You want to talk about, hey, I have 1 million people solving 1 billion people problem, right? So same thing with us. We have 20 million Filipinos without light. I mean, even approaching like 500,000 people that knows it is more realistic for me than saying a government institution and 2 or 3 dealers are going to solve poverty.
And I really love that, because the way that I look at the challenges we face of sustainability, be it social, environmental, or economic, we really believe that the top, the IP owners, the organizations, the leaders, the saviors, as it were, the people who left Microsoft to save the world, right? Like, that model will save everybody else. But the way that you're looking at this is like, no, it's the other way. It's the communities. They have capacity that we're not tapping into. If we do that the right way, if we empower them, that gets us a hell of a lot farther.
So I guess once again, the idea was a few people with lots of opportunities and power can save the world. But it turns out that population is expanding at a rapid pace, faster than ever it has in history, and as more people enter into energy poverty, at least that's where I'm coming from. The more that corporate system or corporate philanthropy or individual philanthropy, it's not proving enough, if you want to call it. It's good, but not enough. And so what happens is they tend to focus on one place or a limited number of places, and when their priorities change, they just leave it, right? Or they do a very contemporary model, which is buy one, take one. So you buy a product, but they will basically have a group and then go to a chosen area and then just dump the thing there, destroying industry. So every store that has anything to do with shoes, or a buy one take one flashlight or whatever, is completely demolished.
Also the businesses behind them, right? The people that build the shoes, the rubber supplier who feeds the shoe, like the peddler, it just keeps going back, right?
And so it's proven to not have the perfect model. Philanthropy without a sustainable business model has proven that that reporting after. In fact, nobody wants to report after that, because if you're not talking, because if it's not with the people, as I said, you're always going back to zero, and whether that's part of the solution or not, we don't know. But what I'm talking about is we need a people part of this. The community needs to be part of this. That technology needs to have a people component to it. And so we ourselves in the solar, I think, with this job green jobs rising faster than any other kind of jobs all around the world, why is they're not a community model? Why does it have to be that we're just retailers?
Right.
It's not really a business model. It's just we're retailers. Even the pay-per-use or the card for communications. The United Nations Habitat in Kenya says they're starting to pay 3 times more than the regular electricity rates using this kind of card model.
Right.
And so there's things that we believe should be with the people. How can for my country, how can 100 million people not be more powerful than a single person or government? They should be part of the solution. And our tradition is about bayanihan and the people. And so it's
bayanihan?
Bayanihan is when somebody gets married and you need to move to another village, whether the wife needs to move or the husband needs to move to be with whoever they chose to be with. Sure. The whole village comes together to carry their house.
Oh wow! Okay.
And they move that whole house, but on their shoulders, and that's called bayanihan.
Just looking at this, like you're telling people, first off, you have common parts. Second is you have open IP, and third is you're telling everyone, make me obsolete. How, as an organization, do you view your sustainability then? Like, does this mean that you are in a constant process of improving the product so that you're, like, the old ones are obsolete for you but not obsolete for the communities? Or is this your legacy and you just view it so differently? You're like, look, my legacy is I just want it to spread as much as it can, and as an organization that's our mission, but then how do you maintain that mission?
So 25% of all workshops above the cost of goods, right? The cost of goods, the cost of trainers are charged to the companies.
Okay.
When they want to go install it in the community, we charge them again. So we're very cash positive.
Okay.
Per nation.
Right.
Right. Now, the other business model is the women cooperatives. If they order from us, we also sell to them. Right? But doesn't mean that they have to get it from us. As much as possible, what we try to say is, can you look for local suppliers? That way, our warehouse is not constantly being taxed by being sole supplier. So we ourselves, the problem is so big that we can go on and on and on for the next 25, 30 years at full capacity with full workshops and still not make a dent in it. I'm not talking about all the 30 countries.
I totally agree.
So let's start with that kind of mindset. The second is 2% of all contracts all around the world, other than us being the headquarters, have to put their money in the regional. Okay. So all contracts, all international, especially us when we get international partnerships, all of that needs to stay in the region.
Okay.
It doesn't come to here. Gotcha. But even us just operating at full capacity is enough for us, even without remittances from all around Asia.
All right, so if we're kind of going to boil this down, like, and you were talking to another social entrepreneur who's looking to solve a problem in their own community or country or whatever. What are 3 pieces of advice you would give them about how to effectively scale a solution?
Well, first of all is the fact that many of the young people out there are from the developing countries. I mean, how many are we? 8 billion people around the world. Many of us, who are exposed to it, that see it every day. But also the initiative is from the developing countries. So don't turn your back on what bothers you, because generally. Maybe other people who are exposed to this every day are also bothered, and if you find them, maybe you can come up with a technical solution to solve it, rather than wait for somebody to come from another country and say that they have the solution. I think we have solutions that are also good for other developing countries. They call it South-South. The second one is don't look at the budget. Nobody starts out with a budget. But maybe there are business solutions that can, as I said, you don't burn your budget, 1 minus 1 is 0, but through this kind of social solutions like we've done, which is through workshops with corporates, and of course with working with supply chains, with women cooperatives, that this can grow your money 1 plus 1, 1 plus 10, and as I said, we've expanded around the world. And I think the third one, which is I think very appropriate for people in the developing world, is don't focus too much on your problems or the problem. Why don't you, as I said, like a white paper, don't just focus on a dot in the middle of the paper. Focus on the rest of the white paper. What are the ways that you could use new ideas and solutions to be able to make an impact on the world? But also, what have you not thought of? And just the sheer mass of young people in the developing countries, we can solve these kind of problems. And as I said, at the end of the day, whether the international NGO stays here or not, or moves priority, or moves to another focus, or have burnt their funds, we can make sure we can learn from that and stick to the ground and stick to our solutions, because I think we're equally valid. If not, the power of the people and the power of the mass, or a massive, easy-to-do solution, is as valid as a one-time, big-time donation.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.